If you're a regular listener of this show, you know we're big fans of building muscle over 50. As Dr. Gabrielle Lyon tells us, muscle is the organ of longevity. Muscle helps keep us functioning at a high level as we age. It gives us a lean, toned body, and we know that generally speaking, more muscle means a faster metabolism, which means more calories burned per day. But gaining muscle can be difficult. It requires some form of resistance training, typically with weights. It requires progressive overload, and it requires us to fuel ourselves properly to create an environment conducive to muscle growth. But what if there was a shortcut, a hack, so to speak? What if there was something we could do, not to replace strength training, but to complement and enhance the hard work we do in the gym that required very minimal additional effort on our part? Sound too good to be true? Stick around. We're going to deep dive into this technology and show you exactly how to build and keep muscle as you age. Hello and welcome to the Over 50 Health and Wellness Show. I'm your host, Kevin English. I'm the founder of The Silver Edge, and our mission is to help you build and maintain a lean, healthy body that you love for the rest of your life, so that you can show up in life as the healthiest, strongest, most vital version of yourself. We have a great show for you today. Steven Munatones is here, and he's going to talk about using blood flow restriction concepts to help us age healthy and strong. But before we get to that, I want to let you know that this episode is brought to you by The Silver Edge. The Silver Edge is my online nutrition, exercise, and lifestyle coaching business, catering to those of you over 50 who aren't ready to give up and buy into the common narrative of it's all downhill from here. At The Silver Edge, we take a health-first approach to working with our clients to help them build lean, strong, vital bodies that last. Look, there's no shortage of lose weight quick coaches and programs in the world, but here's the deal. You can either lose weight quickly or permanently. So if you're tired of losing and gaining the same weight over and over again, if you're tired of constantly dieting, if you have a poor relationship with food, exercise, and your body, then I invite you to book a call and see if our services are a great fit for you. The easiest way to do that is head over to silveredgefitness.com and click on the coaching tab, or just shoot me an email at coach@silveredgefitness.com. Okay, enough of that. Let's get on with today's show. My guest today is Steven Munatones. Steven is the CEO and co-founder of KAATSU, which is a pioneer in the blood flow restriction market. Steven has introduced KAATSU successfully to collegiate and professional sports teams, branches of the U.S. military, and, as you'll soon hear, to a large population of people just like you and me. Steven is an accomplished athlete himself. He was an NCAA Division I water polo player and swimmer. He's a Guinness World Record holder. He's an inductee into the International Marathon Swimming Hall of Fame and the Ice Swimming Hall of Fame. And he's the recipient of the Poseidon Award from the International Swimming Hall of Fame. He has coached the USA swimming national team at 9 international competitions, including 4 world championships, and he served as an NBC commentator at the 2008 Beijing Olympics, and he founded WOWSA, the World Open Water Swimming Association. Join us today as Steven shares exactly how we might harness blood flow restriction technology for recovery, rehabilitation, performance, and longevity. I started our conversation by asking Steven how he got interested in blood flow restriction.
I got here actually through swimming. So I've been a swimmer all my life. I live in Southern California, so I grew up swimming in the ocean. And over the course of my life, I've swum in several dozens of countries, including the World Championships. I was actually an announcer for NBC at the 2008 Beijing Olympics when they had marathon swimming for the first time. So I've been deeply involved with swimming, which is actually coincidentally how I came across KAATSU. So in 2001, I was actually a coach for the USA national swim team, and the world championships were in Japan. And I noticed some Japanese swimmers with these bands on their arms. And I asked them in Japanese, what are those things? I thought they were injured. And they said, well, we're sort of busy with, and I said, no problem. We'll talk later. We did talk later, and they introduced me to Dr. Sato, the inventor of KAATSU. And I took my time after that event to meet Dr. Sato. Sorry, this is a long answer to a very short question.
No, that's good. Yeah, no, go with it. Yeah, I love it.
And so I went to Dr. Sato. He put these strange bands on my arms and then on my legs, and I felt great. And I asked him, I want to learn more about how to do this. He says, great. I've been waiting for someone like you, someone who speaks English, who lives outside Japan, to teach. I said, great. How do I learn? I'm going to go back home to Southern California, but I would love to read something. You have some data, some research, some anything. And he then, very interestingly, he points up to his head and he goes, it's all up here. I said, okay, that's not a problem. I'll come back to Tokyo where his office and laboratories were. And I did that for the next 13 years. For the next 13 years, I visited Japan between 4 and 6 times a year. And I studied under him and his team of cardiologists. What exactly was KAATSU? What exactly is this BFR thing? And he took me to hospitals, medical clinics, baseball teams, sumo wrestler dojos. We worked with people as old as 104. So we spanned everything. And I kept on saying, as an American, when am I going to start? And he kept on saying, as a Japanese, not yet. You still have to learn how to, if we can use a sushi bar analogy, you still are learning how to wash the rice. And so it took 13 years. And then one day when I went back to Tokyo for my regular visit, he said, you're ready. We can start KAATSU. And that was in 2014.
All right. So 2001, you meet this, or actually, I guess you see swimmers with these bands on their arms. And I don't know that much about BFR, blood flow restriction, but I would guess that's pretty early and still very cutting edge back then. For listeners who aren't familiar, you just referenced KAATSU several times. You just referenced BFR. Let's start here. What is BFR, or blood flow restriction, and why would a swimmer want to use that?
Okay. So BFR, blood flow restriction, is actually a misnomer. KAATSU is a Japanese word that means additional pressure. You've probably heard of shiatsu. Shi means hand, atsu means pressure, so sort of a massage. So KAATSU was a form, and I'm wearing one of the bands on my arm. It's hooked to a device with some tubes. What it's doing is actually allowing blood to go into my arm or into my leg, and then slowing it back to the torso. So blood is going in normally, and it's slowed back. Now, when that happens, you get this effect. And I don't know if the camera is exactly showing, but this is my normal skin color.
Yeah.
And this is my pinker, more red skin color. And if you look at the back of my hand, you can also see the darkness in color. So this arm right here, what's happening is every heartbeat, blood is going into the limb and is sticking around a little bit longer than normal. What that does is it forces the blood, not only, and I'm not a veiny guy, but it not only forces the blood into the veins, but also very, very importantly, into the very, very small capillaries of the body. When the blood is forced into the very small capillaries of the body, what Dr. Sato found in the previous century is that leads to a variety of hormonal responses. It leads to a secretion of growth hormone, IGF-1, insulin growth factor, with the engorgement of blood in the limbs as I'm sitting here. So if you look at my right hand, it is as if I was lifting weights or doing push-ups or running up a hill. But in fact, I'm just sitting here talking to you. So my body believes, because of this engorgement of blood, because of the slight increase in lactate in my muscle, that my right arm is actually exercising. I'm just sitting here talking to you, but metabolically, at a cellular level, my right arm is exercising. And when the capillaries are engorged in blood, the muscles are more activated, and that sends a signal through my central nervous system to my brain. And then the brain releases a variety of hormones and metabolites as it normally would, because it thinks I'm actually exercising when I'm just sitting here. So, what are the applications of that? The applications of that are profound. In the case of the swimmers that I first saw, they were putting these bands on their arms before they raced. Now, typically, whether you're a track athlete, a rower, a swimmer, a boxer, etc., you warm up. You warm up in order to get your vascular system and your muscularity ready to perform. Well, in this case, if I look at my hand, this hand or this arm, this side of my body is not warmed up. This side of my body is ready to race. So what was happening in the case of the swimmers is they were putting the bands on their arms and then their legs in order to prepare themselves to race. And that was at the 2001 World Championships. Now, let's say one of those athletes hurt his shoulder, broke his finger, had tendonitis. In this case, he would have a cast or some sort of brace. And we use KAATSU in these cases to avoid muscle atrophy. So typically when someone has a cast, they're in a walker, they're in a wheelchair, etc., their muscles are atrophying. And we know as people over the age of 50, we don't want to atrophy. Muscle atrophy has all kinds of negative effects. So in the case that you're in a walker, a wheelchair, you have a cast because you broke something, we put the bands on either the arms or legs in order to prevent muscle atrophy. And in addition, to keep your vascularity nice and supple and elastic. So these simple bands, in a general term, it's called blood flow restriction, which is a misnomer because it looks like a tourniquet, but in fact, it's not restricting anything. It's simply slowing something down, slowing the blood flow down temporarily and briefly. And so that's another long answer to a very short question.
Well, no, that's where I wanted to go with this, was some of the application side. When you mentioned you saw the bands on the swimmer, I kind of wondered, I couldn't picture how they might be using that while they're swimming. In fact, they were not in that particular case, but that was more for a warm up. And then you mentioned another use case might be for kind of that more rehabilitative or preventing muscle atrophy. Now, so that was then back in 2001. You mentioned this long journey, these 13 years of you going back and forth and that classic sort of master mentor sort of relationship. And now you're ready. How is this technology being used for more general population? So people listening here, most of our folks are not going to be competitive athletes, and they may be in some state of disrepair perhaps, or in need of some rehab. But just for the general 50, 60, 70-year-old, how might this technology be applied today?
Yeah. So the same aspects that a young athlete who's trying to win a gold medal is using KAATSU, the same exact mechanisms, the same exact physiology, human physiology that we all have is applicable. Now, that young athlete is doing it simply to perform at the highest level. When we're 50, 60, 70, 80, and our oldest user is 104 years old, that is also to maintain our muscularity and our vascularity. So we want improved blood flow. And again, just using a visual of my hand with the band on one side and not the other, it's enabling me as I'm sitting down, or how I typically use it, I'm in front of my laptop much of the day, and I'm typing emails with the bands on. I could also read a book. I can also watch TV. I can also walk my dog. So in the same way that the athlete uses the bands to improve their performance, I use the bands to improve not my athletic performance, but my health aspects of my health. Two very important ones are maintaining my muscularity, especially as we age, and also actually even more profoundly to improve or maintain the blood flow throughout our body. And as you know, as we get older, there's neuropathies, there's aches and pains, etc. And so if you do those two things, maintain your muscularity and maintain the elasticity of the vascular tissue, those two things actually are the kickstarter to a variety of hormonal responses in the body. And those responses range from secretion of nitric oxide to the production of insulin growth factor, and all of those things, depending on the protocols that you use, that how you use KAATSU will depend on what results will come. So if you've tripped and you sprained your ankle, you use KAATSU in one way. If let's say you had a hip surgery and you were bedridden for, let's say, 2 or 3 weeks, you're weak, you live in a 2-story home, you need to walk up and down the stairs. Same way that an athlete is using KAATSU to be more powerful, to get off the starting blocks, we could use it as over 50-year-olds to simply walk up and down the stairs, open a jar of jam, wash our hair, be able to walk 2 miles with our pets, just because it's a good thing to do. So the applications are different, but the goals are the same.
Gotcha. Okay. So we are, like you said, we're not necessarily restricting blood, but we are allowing blood to come into that limb. And then we are, I suppose, slowing its return. So keeping that blood and driving it deeper into, like you said, those tiny capillaries, getting into the muscle. We have this kind of this hormonal effect, these beautiful hormones that you're mentioning, the growth hormone and whatnot. Yeah. So, and I can see how that's going to help certainly for rehab, and certainly how that's going to help for longevity. Is there a performance? Because as we know, sarcopenia is a big concern for those of us over 50, that age-related muscle loss. Can I build muscle? Is there a way to use this technology maybe along with resistance training for hypertrophy, for muscle growth?
Absolutely. And some people want to grow different parts of the body. And it's quite funny. We have armbands and we have leg bands. And typically when we provide these bands to, let's say, a husband and wife or a family or even a group of athletes, whether they're in a university and whether they're the women's volleyball team or the men's wrestling team, it's quite funny because the men primarily use it on their upper body, and the women primarily use it on their lower body. And so, but we recommend that everybody, young, old, able-bodied, disabled, use both the arms and leg bands, not together, but separately, because if you want to build muscle, the best thing to do is actually work it in your day. So I don't do pull-ups, I don't do push-ups, but I do use KAATSU 3 times a day while I'm sitting in a sedentary position. In my lifestyle, for me, using KAATSU, and we call this concept double stacking, using KAATSU as I'm typing an email or as I'm on a Zoom call, like now, my right arm is actually working out, or on a telephone conference, I could be doing KAATSU as I'm sitting, as I'm standing, as I'm pacing, across the room. And so when you do that very regular daily secretion of growth hormone actually leads to a very, very nice toning of the body. Now, let's say I wanted to do a charity walk or a charity 5K run, or I simply wanted to build more muscle, let's say in my back of my arm, if I'm a male or female, or I wanted maybe larger shoulders or a thinner waist. In those cases, we put the bands on, and the unit that I'm using here, it's a quite sophisticated unit, but it's easy to use. Oops, sorry.
That's right.
It's easy to use. And so by pushing just 3 buttons, you can affect the different changes that you would like. So if, let's say, you and I wanted to increase our bicep by 2 inches, let's say we just said, you know what? I don't want this dad bod. I want to be ripped, when I take my kids or my grandchildren to the beach this summer. So in those cases, you put the bands on, you start at a very low pressure, and you gradually build up. And that's very, very critical, because at the end of the day, KAATSU is about increasing that elasticity of your vascular tissue. This will lead to a muscle building. But in this particular case, you and I want to build up our biceps, put the bands on low, and then slowly go up and slowly go down. We don't need any weights. We can use weights, and the weights, if we so choose, should be low, because if I do slow up and slow down while I'm contracting the muscle, my muscle will get larger, and it does get larger. And we get all kinds of people every single day writing us saying, I didn't think it was possible. And it's possible. And the reason why is we were taught lift weights, gain muscle, either lift quickly, lift slowly, but lift weights. What weights are doing is it's actually tearing the muscle fiber. And when the muscle fiber is torn, that is a micro trauma in the body that sends a signal to the brain, and the brain releases growth hormone. The growth hormone is released in order to repair that micro trauma. So when it repairs the micro trauma, the muscle gets bigger. All we're doing here is we're skipping over that micro trauma tear. So we're still exercising if we wanted to build our muscle, our bicep for a non-dad bod. So we're building the muscle, but we're not tearing any muscle fibers. It still can be vigorous. It still can be hard. Now I won't be sweating, but it's still, I'm starting to build up in the muscle. It's sending a signal to the brain, and then the growth hormone is released because the cells are actually signaling to the brain, we're doing some work, except there's no micro trauma. So that's an explanation of how you can build muscle in any way. You can use light weights, you can use no weights, you can use isometric pushes, isometric pulls, or you can simply you can play the piano, write a letter, type, whatever movement that you prefer to do.
All right. So I'm kind of fascinated by this. I have heard in sort of the bodybuilding, aesthetic, muscle building community, some uses of this. It's still pretty much kind of on the fringe, I suppose, or more of a hack. Yeah. But I've heard of, like, say, bodybuilders putting them, like you said, on the upper arm, and then using very, very light weight. And they will say that it gets very painful because I suppose you're getting that pump so fast, as opposed to, after you do 3 sets of 15 or whatever you would traditionally do. So when you're wearing these, how comfortable are these, and what's the amount of pressure that you had mentioned, kind of building it up gradually? Are they comfortable?
Yeah, yes. KAATSU, and actually all KAATSU, and in our opinion, all BFR should never be painful. We see it online because it's actually quite dramatic to see a bodybuilder, male or female, with these unbelievably fit bodies with these, bulging muscles. It looks quite dramatic. KAATSU, our main market are baby boomers. 70% of our users around the world, we sell in 49 countries. 70% of those users are over the age of 55. So showing a 65-year-old man behind a computer or walking his dog is not the kind of stuff that's going to get a lot of views on YouTube or online or Instagram. It's effective, but it's not dramatic. And that is what KAATSU is all about. We're about gentle. So I have this band here. I've been actually doing this now for probably 25 minutes or so. It's comfortable. It's snug, but not tight. I'm not out of breath. I'm not, of course, I'm accustomed to KAATSU. I've been doing it for 23 years now. So I'm accustomed to it, but it's not meant to be difficult. It can be difficult if, let's say, you're trying to achieve something, that you're trying to build up your biceps or build up your glutes or what have you. It can be, but for, I would say, 90% of our users, they never push themselves to exhaustion or discomfort or pain. They have it on, it's snug. And of course, folding clothes is a very complex movement. If you think about it, you're standing, you're sitting down, you're doing all these kind of movements. That's like the perfect exercise for KAATSU. There's a lot of variety of movement. You're folding your socks and your underwear, then you're folding beach towels, etc. You're doing all kinds of movements. Another great movement is simply taking a cloth of some sort and wiping your countertop or washing your car windows. This kind of, to use the Japanese technology, wax on, wax off is quite good. And that is good enough. It's comfortable enough. It's snug, but not tight, in order to achieve what you want to achieve with your body. Now, if we want to increase our biceps by 2 inches, okay, then we need to do a little more work. If we simply wanted our biceps, our upper arms to be toned and taut, well, you could do exactly what I just mentioned.
Gotcha. Okay. So the next question that pops up to mind then is for that general use case, right? That person from 55 to 75, or whatever that kind of sweet spot is for the majority of your clients for this. What does programming look like in terms of, do I do this 7 days a week? Do I do it an hour at a time? Do I do it multiple times through the day? What's the practicality of using this to get optimal benefits?
So we always ask the question to our customers, what do you want to achieve? I just was speaking with a woman just this morning before that we had our conversation. Her big thing was her son's wedding. Her son's wedding is in 3 weeks, and she wants to be as fit, as toned, as gorgeous as she can be as the mother. And so in this case, she's got 3 weeks to get ready. So in her case, there's sort of this hyper need to get ready to fit in her dress and be radiant. In her case, I recommend it twice a day. She doesn't have to take out time out of her day, but during the course of her day, as she's doing the final wedding preparations, as she's cleaning her house, going to an office cubicle, etc., she can actually put the bands on her arms for 15 to 20 minutes, not specifically doing exercises, just going about her regular day. If she's sitting down, put them on her legs. If she goes for a walk, put them on her legs. She doesn't have to go for a power walk. She doesn't have to be on a treadmill. She doesn't have to go on a Stairmaster. She just has to move. So in her case, this 3-week window she has to get ready. We want her body systemically to be as toned, as taut, as radiant as possible. Does it in the morning. And the morning ritual, as I explained to her, it could be as simple as put your armbands on as you wash your face, as you brush your teeth, as she puts on her makeup, have the bands on, take them off after she's done her morning ritual. If she makes coffee, if she's in the kitchen, if she's preparing to go out to prepare for the wedding or out to go to her job, she can have the bands on her legs, just simply walking around the house. She doesn't have to do burpees, no squats, just as she's walking. And that's her morning ritual, which a lot of people do. It's something you don't have to think about. And we recommend for these people who want general wellness, just put it by your bedstand, by your desk, in the kitchen, wherever you're going to be, put them on and then go on with your work. In the evening, she has these 3 week, she has this 3 weeks. Obviously there's some stress involved. She's thinking about, did I have all the invites out? Who is RSVP'd? How's the cake coming along, et cetera, helping her future daughter-in-law. And so she probably has some element of stress. In this case, her evening ritual, she would throw on only the bands in very, very low pressure and simply read a book, write letters, do something. She doesn't have to do much movement at all. And this will activate her parasympathetic nervous system, which will help her get into a deeper sleep faster. In that 3-week window, we want her to be sleeping well. We don't want her to be losing sleep because of stress. So anyway, this is how she can do it. And we recommend most of the people over 55, if they're not competing for a specific event, for them to actually work it in, integrate it into their daily lifestyle.
So is it best practice then that we would use, now in that case, right, we had this person with this very specific short-term goal, hey, in 3 weeks, and this podcast is going to drop here early summer. So folks might be thinking, well, hey, I'd like to look my best on vacation here in the next couple of months, or on that cruise, or when I do my beach vacation. So there's that application. But in terms of this general health and wellness, then, is this something I want to do daily forever? Is this something,
Yeah.
can I do it twice a week, or is it best results? What do you tell folks for best practices there?
Best practices are daily use. Daily
Okay.
use integrated into your daily lifestyle. Some people go to the gym 3 to 5 times a week, and you could do it when you're at the gym if that's part of your lifestyle. What we want to do, and this is very, very important, is actually integrate it into your lifestyle. We don't want people to think, I just bought this unit and now I'm going to have to carve out 30 or 45 minutes out of my day, because we know that's generally not sustainable. We've all heard the stories of, I bought an Ab Master. It was really cool. I bought a Peloton, whatever the latest gadget is. We're at it for 3 or 4 weeks, and then suddenly it becomes a clothes hanger. It becomes something we hang towels over. And so we don't want to do, we recommend people don't do that, because we want this daily, literally daily, frequent increase in elasticity of our vascular tissue. We want a daily hormonal response, because that is sustainable, and long-term, that leads to very, very profound results. And what we always recommend people is, in the comfort of your own home, take some measurements of your body parts, go to the bathroom, put on a, whatever, a swimsuit, whatever, take a photo, put it away. 4 to 6 weeks later, do the same thing and compare. And we've always said this, and I want to say never, because we've had a few people return to units, but it is 99.9%. The people are quite happy. And typically, if it was the wife that buys it, how should my husband use it? Or if a dad buys it, how can my teenage daughter use it, who's a softball player, or what have you? And that is literally how we've grown. It's through this satisfaction with the results, and then passing it along through word of mouth.
Okay, so let's dive a little more into just, I guess, the practicality of this. So we're going to weave this into our daily life, right? And as you said, it's not like I'm carving out time to do my KAATSU, right? That's probably not the right mindset to be successful long-term with this, but rather integrate it into what you're already doing. Now, some of us are listening to this. The podcast folks they can't see us. The YouTube folks can obviously see us here. You've got that device on your right arm. And now you had mentioned there's a tube and you had this little digital thing. What is the practicality? If I have 4 of these things on me, do I have 4 tubes and 4 little, how does that work?
Yes. So there are 2 bands, and I only have bands on one of my arms just for demonstration purposes. Right. But typically you put on both bands on your arms or both bands on your legs. You don't put on four things. I admit you get all tangled up in the tubes.
Okay.
And so the unit you can place in your pocket, your shirt pocket here. You can place it in your pants. If you're wearing shorts or Lululemon, there's a belt, a buckle that you can hang on. And so depending on how tall you are or how short you are, the bands are adjustable. And so you put it on so it's comfortable for you. And comfort and gentleness are really key for KAATSU, because that's how people truly incorporate it in their life. And so you put this on as you're doing something, as explained before, and you just integrate it, total integration into your life, whether you have anything, carpal tunnel syndrome, or again, you just maybe on the weekend, you did a long hike with your family or friends and you're a little sore, whatever it is, frequent use. I would recommend daily, but probably most people do it 4 to 5 times a day are most successful. I'm sorry, 4 to 5 times.
Okay.
Sorry.
4 to 5 times a week. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
4 to 5 times a week, 20 to 30 minutes. And again, you're not carving out time out of your day. You're incorporating it into your day. And when that happens, it's not a task to do. It's something that you do because you feel better about. You do that, and you move on. There's a few things you should do to actually maximize the effects. One, very simple, is be very well hydrated. When we get our blood drawn, the phlebotomists always, or doctors always tell us, nurses always tell us, hey, make sure you're well hydrated. It helps the person to stick in the needle into your arm and draw the blood. In the same way, because we're working on our vascular tissue, we want to be very well hydrated. It's not hydration with 2 cans of beer. It's hydration with a bottle of water or tea or something. Again, we want the bands to be snug, so it's not tight. I don't feel there's no pain here. And then we do gentle movement. Now, let's say you and I were doing we were doing a charity thing where we wanted to see how many push-ups can we do in 60 seconds. Well, in this particular case, we would actually practice push-ups with and without the bands, because that's an athletic feat we're trying to achieve. But on the other hand, if we simply wanted broader shoulders, a bigger chest, a stronger chest, then we can do very simple things. We can get tennis balls, squeeze the tennis balls, do wall push-ups, sweep, rake the leaves, shovel snow, whatever we need to do in the course of our day, that's what we can do. We recommend it daily. And people who do integrate into life, they don't see that as a burden. They see that as an opportunity.
Not a burden, an opportunity. Yeah, I absolutely love that. So now you had brought up, if I want to develop my chest, my shoulders, you had mentioned glutes earlier. When I think of this and see how it's attached, I'm thinking arms and legs. How would I use this technology then to work on hypertrophy in my shoulders or my chest or core or
so the core is probably the most things that, especially since we were talking about summer, the core is something that people are conscious of. In this case, you don't have to do crunches or sit-ups or planks. What you can do is simply put the bands on your legs. If you're using it at your home or office, sit up straight, shoulders back, straight spine as you're reading or typing or whatever. Do that for 15 to 30 minutes. It sounds easier than it is, because typically if Americans are like me, I'm leaning back in my chair, I've got rounded shoulders, I've got a curved spine, and I'm relaxed. My core is not engaged. However, if I have the bands on my legs, I'm actually engaging my core. That's exercise number 1. Exercise number 2 is standing up, which I do if I have a telephone conference. Stand up, I have the bands on my legs, and balance on one leg. Balance on one foot, And simply you're balancing. And when I first started to do this with KAATSU, I must admit I couldn't really balance for more than 5 seconds. Now I can actually balance on one leg, minutes at a time. I don't even know. I just balance. In that same period of time, my waist has shrunk because my core has gone from, sort of this rounded dad bod look to a much more taut look. Because when you're standing on one foot with the bands on, there's actually a lot of stress that's put on your core, your trunk. Again, it's not 50 sit-ups, it's not 50 crunches. It's actually engaging the very small muscles in your core and lower back. And then the third exercise, so you have 1, sit up straight, 2, balance on one foot. And the third is, which I also do in, let's say, a telephone conference that I have, put a book on my head and just pace back and forth. I walk with very smooth gait, or I attempt to, because if I didn't walk with the smooth gait, the book would fall. And so I'm walking with my shoulders back, straight spine, walking as we were meant to be, not sort of, walking like that I normally do, with sort of rounded shoulders and sort of hunched over and a poor walking gait. So those are 3 ways you can do your core. For your chest, anything outside of your arm.
Actually, sorry, Steven, let me just interrupt. Sorry, before we get to chest and shoulders, because I have this question in my mind. I suppose some of our listeners might as well. So I could see how I've got that band up high on my leg, right up the upper
Yeah.
part of my thigh, I'm imagining. And I can see how I am allowing the blood to flow in, but slowing the return out of the leg. How am I getting that same slowed return response in my core by having those attached to my legs?
Yes. So very good question. And that's typically where a lot of very intelligent people go. Like, it doesn't make any intuitive sense. It makes complete sense when you understand the body's biochemical system. And so what I mean there is, you have, in this case of the core, you have the bands on your legs, and you've got this pooling, this abundance of blood in your leg. That is just the catalyst for hormonal response. So
Okay.
what's happening is you're engorging the capillary, the microcapillaries of your legs in blood. The brain thinks, okay, my leg is working out, which it is, but you're focused on your core. So that signal is sent up to your brain, but then the brain goes, okay, we're going to release all these hormones. Every cell in the body has a receptor. And when that cell is being exercised, stressed, injured, etc., their hormones flow through the entire body. And when it gets to that particular cell, then it does its magic. Then that hormone actually interacts with the cell. The carrier is the vascular system. The leg, in this case, is simply the catalyst for this natural process to occur. So I'm actually putting stress on my core. And then when the hormones are actually flowing through your body, it actually knows, oh, the stress is on the core. It has no idea that I'm not doing crunches, I'm not doing sit-ups. It just knows that I'm have the stress because I'm trying to balance, or I'm trying to
get that area of your body activated. No,
yes.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, okay.
So
thanks. I'm sorry.
That's the process that the body goes through. And that was the genius of Dr. Sato, who is he's a thinker. He thinks, like, how does a body actually function? He uses the bands simply as a Kickstarter to allow this process to occur.
Gotcha. Okay. Now I interrupted you. You were getting ready to say, now we had the sit up straight. We had the balance on one leg, which I can see how you're firing activation, the small stabilizer muscles there. We had the balancing the book. You were going to talk about chest and shoulders, some things we might do there as well.
Yeah. And the same thing occurs. You put the bands on our arms. Then the arms are the Kickstarter for this process. We could be doing push-ups. We could be doing tricep extensions. We could be doing shoulder presses. The bands are just the catalyst for this process to occur. The brain and the hormones and vascular system are the tools that all of these things go. So if I'm working on my shoulders and I'm putting stress on my shoulders, when the brain releases those growth hormones, it's going to these muscles here. It's going to these muscles here. And that's how we attack the entire body.
All right. So that brings up another question I've got. Now, if I wanted to use this in my workouts, because we were just talking about pushing and pulling and pull-ups, all that fun stuff, is this something, let's say I worked out 4 days a week, purposeful strength training type workout. Is this something I would incorporate once a week, or is this something I would use as a finisher after a workout? Would I use this every time? Do you have any best practices for people who wanted to use this for performance in that regard?
Yeah, this is also a very common question, and how I answer is, of all the people that I've seen, and I've gone all over the world. I've been in, over 80 universities with athletic departments. I've seen track teams, Olympic track teams, Olympic swim teams. Everybody uses it in different ways because they're trying to perform, or I've actually used it with people who have strokes, people who have cerebral palsy, etc. I think, to answer your question, the best people, or I would say the most effective people that I've seen use KAATSU are Navy SEALs. What they do, typically, they have a 90-minute workout in the gym 5 days a week, or sometimes more if they so choose. And they use KAATSU as a finisher for a variety of reasons. One is those guys just like working out. And when I say don't carve out time of your day, for them, they like working out. They like to see how much they can bench press or leg press, or whatever. part of their training to be a Navy SEAL is to be as strong, as resilient as you can. And pushing weight is a good measure of how strong they are. Now they continue their workout for 60 minutes, their standard workout. They're in the gym. They've got all these very talented strength conditioning coaches overseeing them. Then the last 30 minutes, they use KAATSU as their finisher. So in this case, they have to reduce the amount of resistance, the amount of weight that they're actually lifting or exercising with. And they're just getting that massive pump at the end of their workout. They still do their traditional stuff. They still do that 30 minutes they're still doing the same exercises. They're simply just not using the same weight, but they're getting this massive pump. They're getting a massive deluge of beta endorphins. So they come out of their 90-minute workout feeling pumped, feeling like Ironman, and they've achieved hypertrophy. They've achieved either maintenance or improvement of their strength. And I think that when I see all the applications of KAATSU, I see people like the Navy SEALs doing what they like to do, following a proven program to stay fit, but they're enhancing that with KAATSU in the last part of their workout.
Okay, I absolutely love that. I just was curious how that might be incorporated into more of that performance side of things, right? You had mentioned, we started this conversation, you first interacted it with in a performance setting, right? These people were preparing for intense physical effort, and that was one way they used it. And there's another way we might use it for performance. Now, a lot of our folks, a lot of our listeners out here, it's again, we're talking about summer's coming, we got summer vacations, the beach, all that fun stuff. And a lot of our listeners are probably more concerned about weight loss than they are muscle building, particularly so maybe some of our ladies, right? And now in this show, we talk about all the time, hey, let's flip the script and because there are so many healthy properties of muscle. But in terms of somebody who's thinking, well, this is pretty fascinating, but I'm not a Navy SEAL, I'm not a performance person. I can see how maybe, this could tone me up a little bit, and that would be nice. What would you say to just that average person that says, well, my biggest goal really is just to lose these 30 pounds that I just can't seem to get rid of? How might this technology be incorporated for someone like that?
So I can answer that question using an example of NCAA Division I wrestlers. We know wrestlers, boxers, MMA fighters, they have to make their weight. So if you're 150 pounds normally, you're probably fighting, let's say, at the 144 weight category. So you have to drop 6 pounds. Typically, if we remember the movie Rocky, they put on the warm stuff and they run and they basically sweat it out. And they exercise because when you exercise, do something aerobic, what you're essentially doing is you're engorging your limbs in blood. So, you're running with your quads and your hamstrings are being engorged in blood. And when the vascular tissue is engorged, and with every heartbeat, dun, 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 this expansion, when the blood goes through, requires energy. And so with requiring energy, we're burning calories. And so that's why they're running. They're running to actually force energy consumption in the body, which then leads to obviously water weight loss, but also, calorie consumption. Now think about that. We're engorging the capillaries in blood and they're going. So right now, if we were able to do a test, we could show that my right arm is actually burning more calories than my left arm, because just like Rocky was running with a hoodie and sweats on, in the same way, my right arm is being engorged in blood, and every heartbeat requires more energy than normal. So there's a certain amount of energy for this arm, more energy is burned on this arm. And so the best way to lose weight with KAATSU is simply walking or doing some kind of body weight exercise. Put the bands on your legs, walk, however much you want to walk. It could be a mile, it could be 3 miles, it could be more, whatever it is. You don't have to actually do a power walk. You don't have to do a jog, because when you have the bands on your legs, you have this expansion of the capillary tissue, which requires more than normal energy, burning calories. Now, the catch here, and we learned this actually from wrestlers, is because you have this energy burn, this energy consumption, this calorie burn, lots of people feel hungry after they do KAATSU. Well, if you've just burned all these calories and you want to lose weight, the last thing you should do is, go to Dunkin' Donuts and add more calories in. So those 90 minutes after you finish KAATSU, your vascular tissue is still elastic. And when we blow up a balloon, and then we deflate it. The balloon is still pliable. It's still elastic. And so those 90 minutes, our vascular tissue is still elastic. It is a maximum calorie burn in that period. So walk with KAATSU. If I had to say, 3 things: walk with KAATSU, comfortable walk, refrain from eating 90 minutes after you finished your walk, and do that if you can daily. And that's the kind of stuff, if your child's wedding is in 3 weeks and you wanted to lose that last 15 pounds, think what Rocky did, except with KAATSU, and that comfortable walking, refrain from eating 90 minutes a day, and do it regularly or daily. That will get you there.
Okay, that's interesting. So I could see how we can increase our energy burn or calorie burn, right? And that certainly is going to be one half of our equation there for fat loss. But it also occurs to me, we've spent the last, what would we be talking here, 40 something minutes probably. We're also building muscle, which is metabolically expensive, which is going to give you more of that long-term effect, having that we're raising our calorie burn while at rest by building some extra muscle. Now, Steven, here's where we are today. This is pretty cutting edge stuff. This is very fascinating. Where's this technology heading? Where do you see things happening in 1, 5, 10 years with this kind of technology? I mean, today you've got these bands, you've got some tubes and things. Yeah. Will this be, is the future me with my iPhone and no tubes? Is the future some other thing?
The future
what does it look like?
The future
is now. Okay.
So what happened was, when we started to use these bands with the tubes, and our user base started to get older and older, it literally grows older year by year, faster than our chronological age. We realized, and a lot of people realized, that these bands would get in the way. If I'm I said, you wake up in the morning and you go wash your face and you put on your makeup, brush your teeth, etc. Well, these bands get hooked on the doorknob or what have you. We realized that. And it was actually U.S. military that asked us, is there any way we could achieve the same thing without these tubes? And we thought, that makes sense, because if we're selling to a VA hospital and we've got all these older veterans and we've got these tubes all over the place and it hooks somewhere, well, maybe someone trips. So we just released this year a Bluetooth version. So and I wish I had it. I don't have it at my desk right here, but this unit, it was now miniaturized and placed on this band, and we use our phone to actually do all the things that we used to do on the handheld unit. We call that our Bluetooth version, and that is a brand new platform, which is very cool, because up till now, of all those people in the 49 countries around the world, we tell people how to use this, but we actually don't know exactly how that 55-year-old man in Toronto, Canada, how much pressure or how long he's using this. We have no idea. Now, with our Bluetooth version, now we don't know exactly what he does, but we have this cumulative data, and now we can tell that any 55-year-old person around the world, hey, if you're in this age range, this is what the average user does. This is what the sort of the top end people do. And this is what the more sedentary people who live a sedentary lifestyle do. And therefore, we give people a range. Now, the next step in this version is, because these bands there's an air bladder inside. And when this air bladder actually senses vibration. So 10 years from now, this band is going to be preventative. So in other words, if if I'm going to need maybe a shoulder surgery 5-10 years from now, if I'm going to need a knee replacement 5-10 years from now, our body actually gives off tiny vibrations. Well, this system can actually measure the vibrations. Now, we do need to collect that data from people all around the world. But once we get all this data, we can tell you, for example, Kevin, Kevin, maybe you're a jogger in your 30s and 40s, and eventually in your 60s and 70s, that may come back unless you fix your gait, unless you lose weight, unless you do certain things. And therefore, we'll use the same platform, but now instead of helping the body, in addition to helping the body with the muscularity and vascularity, we can actually give you information that you can tell yourself, oh, you know what? I should lose weight because I don't want that hip replacement. I don't want that knee replacement, etc. So that's where the technology is going ultimately.
Okay. And it seems to me like there's got to also be some cutting edge medical. You had mentioned some of this preventative, and that's pretty cutting edge. If, hey, your body's sending a signal, and once you have the sea of data, you can say, when we see this, this follows right after time. And then you can have more and more actionable information you can give your users. Absolutely love that. What about you had mentioned, hey, we can use this technology to prevent knee replacements, hip replacements, things like that. Certainly everybody listening to this, that's got to be very interesting. Are there other areas in medicine where this technology is being used or could potentially be used that's interesting?
Well, we've all heard of Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and other people who want to eventually go, put humankind on Mars, on the moon, etc. Well, when you're in zero gravity condition, up in space, the body doesn't know which way is up and which way is down. There's no gravity to pull us down. What happens is you lose muscle mass, you lose bone density, and you're actually, the fluid in your body has no idea what is up and down. Quite often, the fluid equalizes in the body, and for astronauts, it creates tremendous headaches. And there's so much fluid in the body that the actual eyeball can change. Now imagine we've only had people in space for so long. If we're eventually going to go to Mars, people are going to be in zero gravity conditions for many, many months. So what are the effects of that? So right now we're doing a variety of testing to prove that you can maintain muscle mass, you can maintain bone density in zero gravity conditions. And so, we're talking about cutting edge. We're way looking out in the future, but more practically, there's not going to be many people who are going to volunteer to go to Mars, at least in our lifetime. But we will have a lot of people with neurological diseases. We will have a lot of people as we all age and our medical community can keep us alive longer. We're going to have a lot of our colleagues who are going to be bedridden and just in bed. Now, of course, we'll have some physical therapists prevent bed sores, but we do want the body to be as resilient as possible as we're in our 80s and 90s and over 100 years old, and maybe we can't walk up and down the stairs. So in those cases, our current technology that we've fine-tuned with the unbelievable assistance of quadriplegics, because we do work with a lot of wounded soldiers. We work with a lot of people who have had car accidents, etc., and now they're quadriplegic. So these people, these unfortunate, survivors of whatever accident or wound they had, we put the bands on their arms or their legs, and we do what we call passive KAATSU. And it's amazing that we can build muscle, we can make skin tone better with passive KAATSU. So they can't consciously move their own limbs. We put the bands on, and the caretaker, their spouse, their family members, etc., come and they actually move the limb for them. This is especially important for people who have Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, etc., because as those unfortunate diseases progress, they lose the motivation or even the awareness to do exercise. So with those people, again, just like the bedridden people, we can put the bands on their arms or legs. We can actually assist them in the movement of the limb. And it doesn't matter if you're 85 years old with Alzheimer's, as long as you have the bands on and someone is moving your arms, they are building their muscle just like you and I would be in a gym.
Right. Yeah, no, that's fascinating. Thanks for sharing that. I think that this technology it is fascinating. I think it has a lot of applications outside of just, I had thought of it just as performance or rehab, how it's come into my world, but you're talking about just this everyday use for longevity and for healthy aging, which we're all about on this show. And then maybe some of these more cutting edge ideas. Absolutely love it. Well, Steven, as we're wrapping up here, how can people get in touch with you? How can they learn more? How can they potentially get this technology, learn more about this technology? Where do you want to send them?
Yeah, to our website. So it's www.kaatsu.com. That's KAA, so 2 A's, KAATSU.com. We also have 2 times a week, open-ended webinar on Tuesdays and Thursdays, 12 noon. It's on the website. So lots of people have heard about this, are disbelieving about this. They have a specific question. They come and they just ask whatever they would like. It could be for them. It could be for a family member. It could be a friend. So, and then lastly, if they want a specific question by email, it's very simple. info at KAATSU.com, KAATSU, a Japanese word that means additional pressure.
Fantastic. And folks, I will drop all of that information as well as any social links, etc., into the show notes. You guys can all find that there. Steven, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show today and sharing all this fascinating knowledge with us. I think it's great work you guys are doing, and just encourage you to keep up the great work.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Appreciate the opportunity.
Okay, that's our show for today, folks. If you've enjoyed this podcast, I want to let you know that we have other free resources over at silveredgefree.com. There you'll find our free guides with our top tips on nutrition, exercise, and healthy lifestyle to assist you in your weight loss and fitness journey. So feel free to head over there and download anything that looks useful to you. I'll put links to everything we talked about in the show notes, and you can find those over at silveredgefitness.com/192. As we wrap up our time together today, you can show your support for this show in 2 important ways. One is to tell a friend about this podcast and encourage them to give it a listen. The second is for you YouTube folks to click the like and subscribe buttons, and for you podcast folks to consider giving this podcast a 5-star review on whatever platform you listen to podcasts on, and be sure to subscribe and follow so you don't miss any future episodes. I really appreciate you spending your time with me today. And until next time, stay strong.